Today is June 10th, 2010. This is the start of an interview with Mr. John McClory at the RSVP offices of Catholic Social Services of Macomb. Mr. McClory is 92 years old. He was born March the 1st, 1918. Mr. McClory currently resides at 33433 Shaner in Sterling Heights, Michigan. My name is Dave Brousseau, and I will be the interviewer, and Miss Ann Bartlett will be the videographer. Mr. McClory, would you state for the record the branch of service that you served?
Well, interestingly enough, the branch of service that I served in was the Air Force. United States Army Air Force.
Okay, that was still where the Army Air Corps was together, right?
Right.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you were born, where you went to school, and your family makeup.
Well, I was born March 1st, 1918 in Chicago, Illinois, as I recall. Now, unless I'm mistaken, it could have been in Detroit, Michigan. My father was a salesman, and he worked in various territories, and we may have been living temporarily in Detroit, whereas our original residence would have been Chicago. But be that as it may, all of this must have taken place here in the Detroit area. To the best of my knowledge, it did. Outside of my birth, I think it was Chicago, Illinois.
Where did you go to school?
I went to St. Martin's High School in Detroit. And it was right across the street from where I lived at that particular time. It was on Lenox Avenue, I believe. And very interesting experience. We had a fine pastor, a Father William Hennigan, and he really was outstanding in his handling of all the people that he had in the school itself. And it was a Catholic high school, St. Martin's Catholic High School. And it was, my own personal feeling was it was an excellent experience. The people that were handling our education were really excellent.
Were they nuns or?
They were nuns, yes. And very strict.
You remember what they were? What order?
I think...
were they the IHM?
The IHM,
okay.
Yes. So but they were excellent teachers, and I spent my entire, my grade school as well as high school.
How big a family did you have?
We had, let's see, I had a brother and a sister, and mother and father. And both the brother and the sister were younger than I. And incidentally, they're still with us. And
great.
But and I see the brother more frequently than I do the sister.
Where is she?
She's living out in California.
Oh. And your brother?
And he's living here locally.
Good. Did you get drafted or did you enlist?
Well, as it was, I was working for the United States Naval Ordnance Plant in Center Line.
How did you get into that?
Well, I was hired on as an employee.
Ah.
I was a USNOP worker, inspection, and we were doing inspection on all the materials that were being manufactured for usage in the war area. So I was called upon to go to the areas where the material was being manufactured and also to examine it, all under the handling or leadership of one of the Navy Department people, because it was their particular installation. It's still there, I believe, in Warren. But
Now, this was before the war.
prior to the war, yes. Just prior to the war.
So you got through high school and then you went to work,
I went to work there.
and what did they call it?
The United States Naval Ordnance Plant.
Okay.
And
So you enlisted or you were drafted?
well, no, I applied for the position and was trained for the job right there on the spot. And then under their supervision, I went with of course, with the Naval Ordnance, with the ordnance officers, and whenever they examined equipment that was being manufactured and had been accepted by the inspection department of the Naval Ordnance people, one of which I was, and we were in a position where we had to either approve or disapprove the usage of it, under their supervision, of course.
So was this your formal entry into the armed forces?
Well, I didn't realize at the time when I went to work for them that this was going to be an official ordnance depot, but it did turn out to be that way, and we were under high scrutiny at all times, and our leadership was really excellent. They were all naval officers and had been trained in the usage of the materials that were going to be utilized, and which we were manufacturing and inspecting on the surface.
You were considered a civilian employee, though?
I was a civilian employee of theirs, that's right, and a real privilege. But was nicely handled, and was a great experience for me. But and I think if you look back into their records there, why it was you were under the gun all the time.
Yeah, I'm
So
sure.
it was well handled. I don't know what else I can fill
Okay.
you in with, but I had been working there as a civilian employee for some time before the war started. I think about 3 years, if I'm not wrong. But and they had me going out to visit suppliers who were manufacturing or finishing products that we had, and under supervision, of course, where we would go with the naval authorities and investigate and inspect the materials that were being manufactured, most of which were being manufactured at the Naval Ordnance Plant in Centerline, which was our official status.
Okay, now the war starts.
The war started.
How did your job change once the war began?
Well, I continued with a regular routine in inspecting naval materials, and under supervision, and we would go to suppliers who were manufacturing or had manufactured or completed units for us, and examine on their facilities the effectiveness of the materials, and especially where explosives and etc. were being utilized. But it was quite an experience. It was really interesting and most fulfilling. And I was surprised to learn while there that, of course, I was in draftable service, and that's exactly what transpired. Even though I was working for them, why, my name happened to be pulled, and I guess I ended up in the Air Force. So how it transpired, I think I had an opportunity to, I had to take an exam for one of several places, and apparently I must have qualified for service in the Air Force, and they chose to put me under hold and, until I finished my service there with them, and then I was to report for duty. And
So did your job assignment change now that you're part of the Army Air Force?
it didn't change, no. No, I continued on with my works that were involved then, and all under excellent supervision and very well handled. It was quite an experience.
You had some experiences in different places.
Yes.
You spoke of Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Oh, I was stationed in Sioux Falls for part of my training.
And what were you training for at that time?
Air Force radio operator mechanic.
So that was a little bit different than your original.
Amen.
Yeah.
So it was
Can you tell us a little bit about that
a
training?
change, but it was very interesting, and in essence, we had to learn a lot of new techniques and that were being utilized by the Air Force, and in order to understand the usage of the equipment that was involved. Now wait a minute, this is now, the materials that were manufactured at that time were manufactured, the ones I was involved with were manufactured for the Navy Department, and were explicitly for ordnance usage. So my job was to go with supervision, of course, to the various installations that were finishing equipment that were being manufactured for them. And after we had inspected them and put them through all the modes and so on that we were supposed to, then they assembled the elements, some of them, to ascertain whether they were serviceable and would, do the job. And we witnessed all of the testing and so on, and listened to the critics, if they had any. And but it was quite an interesting affair, and the leadership was excellent, and I have to say that I look back to it as a time in my life that was of extreme import to me.
Now, did you move then to the Sioux Falls for some training for the Air Force?
Let's see, yes, I did. There was just briefly.
Was that the radio?
We're at the radio operator segment there, and along with a number of other enlistees that were pulled in. So
And all that was after basic training.
that was all after our basic training,
Yeah.
yes.
We'll take just a pause in your story for a minute, because I think your son is here.
Oh,
Hello, Dad.
hi, Jack.
Hi. I want to introduce you also to Mr. Joe Salvia.
Yes, this is Mr.
Yeah, we had a chance to say hello earlier,
Yeah,
yeah,
man.
yeah. I could, I still got that
My
good,
pleasure.
strong handshake.
Yeah,
Hi, Dad. How are you? Give me a hug.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, too. You having a good time? You remembering all this
Oh,
stuff?
wow.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's
Getting
quite a-
cranked-
Dave.
Getting
Nice to
cranked
meet you,
up.
Dave.
I'm
Really
Jim Buckley.
appreciate Jack McClory.
Jim.
This is
Jim.
my son.
Hi, and I'm Ann Bartlett.
Jim.
And nice to meet you.
Nice
My
to meet
pleasure.
you.
Really appreciate you folks doing this. I know my dad certainly does, and it's a long way to go back to recall some things, but we have a lot of
Seems to
people.
be coming out pretty easy.
Good. And I have paperwork to back it up as well, so, if there's, I didn't bring that today, but if you gentlemen require any of that, I can dig into the files and,
Whatever.
If you have something in a summary form of some kind, we'd love to have it.
Yeah, I'll work that out for you.
Sure.
I may need a few days on that.
Sure,
get it.
I'll give you a card
That way
and,
you have a jacket with backup information, correct dates or whatever.
Thank you,
yeah.
thank you.
Did you
Give
have,
my card as well.
sure. Did you have something that you wanted to give to him?
Yeah, I've got a special medal.
Okay.
Just for the sake of everyone's knowledge, about 10 or 12 years ago, being in charge of the Milford Memorial Day Parade, a lot of guys would come without uniforms, or they lost this or lost that, so I implemented a thing called a Veterans Medal, and I'm gonna try to claim ownership on that because nobody else has ever done that. And the Veterans Medal is simply a medal that we present to our fellow veterans in honor of their service to our country, and in remembrance of each other. It doesn't come from the president, it doesn't come from the Army or the Armed Forces, it's simply honoring each other. So I think probably well over 3,000 medals that I've done. On Memorial Day this year in Milford, there was 125 new guys that came to Milford, and we form up with them in ranks. We make sure they all fall in and line up, dress right dress, and then we have them do a left face, and then we form 5 columns, and we have senior officers and senior NCOs in uniform, whether they're active duty or not, and then we formally present the medal, and as if you were in service, and we go through that little ceremony. So my mission here today is to do that and make sure that you're not forgotten by your fellow veterans. The eagle represents all the branches of service. The torch that it's carrying is symbolic of the fires of freedom that we supposedly went in service for. And then on the bottom of the medal, there's some mountains, and we kind of symbolize that as being America. You know, it's the mountains depicting our country. And on the back, with just a simple engraving, it's honored American veteran. And I think everyone who served in our armed forces needs to have at least one recognition, one medal, and that's to be remembered as someone who served our country. You know, whether you had a good time or a bad time, whether you had medals and you lost them all, you know, you still served in our country. I mean, not in your case. So, if you
Can I see that for a
Oh, yeah.
minute, please? I don't know if you can
Sure.
pick that up.
Like the other folks that
And-
live here, will
Yep.
they be involved?
Oh, is that
okay?
We did a person earlier, we just finished interviewing, and then
Yeah.
2 weeks
Yep.
ago, there was a, like a man 2 weeks
And then the
ago,
back,
he broke down at the end of our interview.
Excellent.
We talked for like an hour and a half with him, and he said that was the one
Thank
thing
you.
that, he said, and he was overseas all during the Second World War, and then
Yes.
coming home, he said, no one has ever thanked us for our service.
Yeah.
Yeah, got off the
So-
train,
so this is
and there
my
wasn't
mission and my
anybody
passion.
there, like, when they, in those days, they had the newsreels, and they show you the parades and everything. He said there was none of that. We got off the train, and it was like, get lost.
We did
it really popped right out of his conversation, just out of the blue. And
Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
I,
Sticks.
oh,
Of all the things you
of
remember.
all the things, you know, and he was sharp. He had photos, and
Wow.
he was in the anti-aircraft
Yep.
battalion, and was overseas in near the whole war.
If I would have thought
That's
ahead of time,
huge.
I would have formally invited the Smithsonian camera team to come to Milford, not because of me, but because of seeing how important we take the emotion of service. We have no politicians, no clowns, no candy throwing, no classic cars, no carnivals, no art shows, no merchandising. We have Jeeps, CJs and Wranglers to carry guys that can't walk. We have military Jeeps, so everybody's visible, okay? And there were 16,000 people in our community to say thank you. And one man drove to Kentucky to pick up his dad and bring him back. Another guy came in from Colorado. He had heard about our gathering. So that's what it's all about, and as long as I'm living and breathing and moving, I will find veterans. We've done a ceremony. We're doing one for each American house. The girls will make an announcement, the activity directors, and we kind of get the veterans who are able to get down there. And we talk a little bit about service, and then I'll present the medals. If they can't stand, I bring them to them. So I don't think I'm ever going to all of them.
And this man has been very, very instrumental in helping my father get aid and attendant care benefits. He stepped it up, and I'm gonna make sure that he gets credit for that.
Good.
We fought real hard. He helped me get in touch with my congressperson it hasn't happened yet, but I know that it's gonna push it through now, so they're very, very helpful.
who are you dealing with?
Kwame's mom.
Cheeks,
Well,
okay,
yeah.
okay,
Believe it or
okay.
not, yeah, yeah.
Okay,
And I have to say, her office stepped it up,
great,
and they got involved like that, and, you know, I
Super.
wouldn't have thought of it if
super.
Mr. Salvia hadn't pushed that in my direction, so their services are really something. People don't realize what these guys do, and they're affiliated with a great bunch here. This is a place where we're probably all gonna end up.
The most important thing I see when we come to visit the facilities is to bring life back into the person, because
Yes.
sometimes you get here and it kind of gets mundane. And when I walk in, and I believe you were in the last meeting, and we kind of got things going, okay? We talk about service, I come in, I say, at ease, okay? And everybody knows what that means. So we get everybody's attention.
That's
and-
home ground.
And that's what it's about. I kind of coined the phrase, you know, when we went in service, we all went to Fort Knox or Fort
Yeah.
Benning or someplace.
Right.
Right.
And we were all young, and we didn't know anybody. We came from California, and the east, north, and south,
True.
and you all were new, and you had to make a buddy. I said, this is your new Fort Knox. So you're all new, you're all strangers to each other. It's up to you to buddy up and take care of each other, because that's what you have to do.
Yeah,
This is the beginning of the rest of your life,
that's right.
okay? Son can't be here every day. You gotta make a friend. You gotta help the guy next to you who can't walk as well today. Somebody else maybe has to write letters for you. But you all can team up, especially from veterans and spouses of veterans, and make something happen besides just living here. Okay?
That's great,
Well put.
Do things.
that's great.
Yeah.
okay? You're never.
Very true.
Yeah, and you have skills and you have strength in your hand, I sense that. So being old doesn't mean you're done,
Nah.
okay? Being old is a process of what are you gonna do tomorrow, okay? Because you got something to do, okay? If I come around, I'm gonna keep you off KP and guard duty, that's my line. So, all right, I
Well
think,
put.
I mean, I don't wanna interrupt you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Put that
so
on.
do you feel like standing up?
Sure thing.
Do that? Okay. All right. On behalf of all our American veterans, we present you this medal today in honor of your service to our country. Keep it in a place of honor and know that you're not forgotten. And anytime you are, you let them know that you served in our armed forces. So we never forget each other.
Thank you, sir.
Great.
Thank you. Good to see you, man. Okay.
My privilege.
All right. All right.
Best wishes.
Yes, sir. Okay. All right. You enjoy your interview today. And, yeah, I forgot the activities girl. What's her name?
Janet.
Janet. She wanted to come up and take a picture, but maybe you can get her that.
Yeah, this is her camera.
Okay, that's good. She had to go walk someone.
Yep.
So that was.
We'll have pictures, and I forgot to bring my camera. We will have,
Oh, she.
Janet will have it.
Yeah, she'll.
Good.
Yeah,
have
and,
it.
and you're gonna get a DVD of this tape
terrific.
when it's all done.
We'll get Joe in it as well, I think
Oh,
that was
okay,
terrific.
good.
You know the History Project, right?
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
Okay,
yeah.
all right, so,
There's different groups doing it, right? I mean, I know there's different
Yeah,
folks I've
yeah.
seen doing it.
right.
Yeah,
That's
maybe,
one in Macomb County.
yeah, maybe if we can get linked up with you, we could
Absolutely.
expand this program a little
Right.
bit.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
and maybe I could put a narrative together about the Veterans Medal.
Good.
Because I think, I believe that should be part of our armed forces, so.
You represent.
Well, we gotta keep it going and find out as much as we can.
Right, little by little, you know.
Joe represents all the American houses in southeast Michigan, I
Oh,
assume.
nice.
Yeah,
Right.
for clarity, I'm not representing the Army today. In honor of a fellow veteran, I just put my uniform on because there's connectivity. So I'm not dishonoring my uniform, I'll make sure that's
No.
crystal clear, because you only wear your uniform for certain occasions.
Yes.
You know, do military honors for funerals, obviously Memorial Day, Armed Forces Day, things like that. But today I felt that, you know, I wanted to do it for his, I mean, this is kind of a small tribute. And I don't believe I dishonored my uniform today.
Not,
So I
not in the
Not-
slightest.
Very nice.
I
Not in the
brought my
slight,
suit, so when I leave here, I'll change into my business suit, and,
We-
you know,
we,
that's important to me,
Yeah.
okay?
Yes,
yeah.
All right,
understood.
so Jack,
We'll
Thank
see
you.
you.
all right, I'll see you later, I want you to pull your apparatus
Yeah.
down there, okay?
Best wishes.
I'll see you again, okay? We're gonna have like monthly cycles here, so we'll get together and we'll shoot the breeze.
Wonderful.
I never know what we're gonna talk about, but we'll find out.
That's terrific.
Okay.
All right, I'll see you later.
I'll see you out, Joe.
Yeah, okay.
I'll be back.
Okay.
Excuse me.
You guys are with Steven Spielberg, I think, right?
That was interesting.
Okay, let's get back to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. How long were you there? Do you remember?
Oh, I was there for about pretty close to 6 months, I think it
Yeah.
was. Yeah. And maybe a little bit longer than that. But then I was shipped back further to catch up with whatever group I was attached to. And
What was the radio training that you got at Sioux Falls? What was the purpose behind that?
well, they have an airfield, you know, they did at that time. And it was, of course, under excellent instruction and supervision. And we were all put through how would you put it, a warm-up to get a feel as to where we were and how far along, you know, we were in whatever work we were doing. And whether we needed additional instruction before they would make any further inquiry of us. But I was probably, at the time I didn't realize, but I had been for 3-4 years, I guess, working as a naval officer, not as a naval officer, but as a naval
Inspector?
inspection. This was, they were really tough. They weren't going to let anything through that wasn't exactly right. So it was a learning experience for me, and really a marvelous learning experience, because the people who were training us and teaching us and attempting to give us a background as to where the items that we were manufacturing and inspecting, where they were going to be utilized and how. And it amounted to even to taking us to various sources that were doing mechanical inspections of some of the elements we made, and or those who were dealing especially in the business of, as you probably knew, they had a habit of manufacturing something, and then for test purposes to see whether or not it would work, they would, in essence, the item would be destroyed in the process. And then we were to inspect it and see what transpired with the materials. And it was a learning experience all the way around, because you know, the Navy wanted to be sure that here they were way out and thousands of miles away at sea, and they didn't know what to expect sometimes from some of the materials that they received.
For sure.
So it was a great exposure to rules and regulations, and you learn to adhere to what was required, what was written into everything that we were asked to manufacture and inspect in a bargain. And really, I took my hat off, and again I take it off, to all the people that took time out to train me, because it was a terrific learning experience, and I will never ever forget it.
Were you able to stay in touch with your family while you were stationed?
Yes, I was. I did. I contacted them from time to time, but by and large, it was all. Most of mine with them was by letter, you know, mail.
Were you single at that time?
I was, yes. Yes.
How did your mom take to giving you to the service?
Oh, she. I don't think she was extremely happy about it, but apparently, because I was just a kid, as it were, and but she was pleased with the response that she got from the people in charge at our place, and I'm glad to relate that everything went along in great order, and it was something something to behold. I won't ever forget it, and I had the utmost and deepest respect for the people that I was working for. They took me, a young man who had no, by and large, any experience whatever in the business of outside of test work and so on, of inspecting materials, and I was put through a very rigorous and rugged, shall we say, training schedule, and it was very, very helpful to me, and it made me respect immensely the work of the people that I was going to be working for, that is, the naval officers who were leading our groups.
Imagine your mom was happy just that you were stateside.
Yes, she was, for that purpose, yeah.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, those things don't last too long, but well, you find yourself somewhere else other than where you were being trained, you know.
What happens after Sioux Falls, South Dakota? Where did you go from there?
Let's see. From Sioux Falls, we went south, I think, to Texas for some further exposure to the equipment and so on that we were using.
This was still radio
This was still
related.
radio operating, and all bound up into the Army and Air Force and its techniques in trying to keep in touch with their aircraft, both on ground and on a flight, and it was really thorough. We didn't have much time to think about anything else except what we were being exposed to at the time. And I think they did a marvelous job, because they used to rate these groups if there were, you know, with the amount of, later on, not at that point, but later on they would rate them with respect to our capacity to be thorough in our inspections, and especially if they had equipment that didn't respond entirely to the way it should. But they were buying elements that were manufactured under scrutiny, and they were always thoroughly checked before they left our habitation. And we were always under demand. I mean, if you were doing something, you had to do it in accord with their rules and regulations, and they were very thorough in checking everything out, for which I can now understand even better, because I realize there were a lot of things in all the haste of manufacture and so on. It's easy to allow something to slip through, we found out we were training, not only in training, but we were testing materials that we would inspect, and we were expected to make sure that they would withstand the pressures of the explosives and so on that they were going to handle. So it was extremely thorough, and the officers and so on that were handling everything were to be highly recommended. They really did a marvelous job, in my opinion.
Did you establish any particular friendships in these locations that you carried over?
Well, sad to say, they were short-lived, because you know, you'd go from station to station, and unfortunately, you didn't have an opportunity to really become very thoroughly acquainted with them. Locally, while I was here, yes, I made a number of friends, and from time to time I have seen them, but in recent years I haven't. I don't know whether any of them are still living here in this area, or whether for a fact they are still living.
Where did you go from Texas now?
Well, from Texas, let's see. From Texas, I went to Sioux Falls, and Sioux Falls, I was there for, I think it was pretty close to a year. But then I had to go back to the unit that I had been assigned to initially, and then they discovered that they had more than enough ROPs, radio operator mechanics, and they would assign us elsewhere to other groups that were in need of people of our training and talent.
Okay, where did you go next?
Let's see, I went to Sioux Falls, and then, well, I was sent back to Texas also, and I think those were the two elements that I had.
When did you end up at Selfridge?
I ended up at Selfridge after my last assignment when I was in Texas, and they sent us back here to for what purpose, I don't know, to join us up with several other groups that were involved in similar training, but were being trained elsewhere.
So did you have some additional training at Selfridge?
I had some additional training at Selfridge, yes.
Do you recall when that was?
And that was, oh gee. Gosh, that had to be, I know it was before I got out of the service. Had to be, let's see. Oh, heck.
Well, that's not really that important.
Actually, it doesn't lead to anything important, I'm sure, but except that we spent time in the field there at Selfridge, and they trained us to a degree there in their techniques, and then we were sent to individual units where they required people of our particular caliber.
Mhm.
What was suffrage used for at that time? What type of a Air Force base was it?
Well, it was a training center, and for people in the communications end of it too. They did. I did a lot of my work there that I was trained for, and we were. I think it was extremely important at the time that we learned all the rudiments of Air Force requirements, where you're to do this and that and the other thing, all simple elements, but they vary from post to post, and we were trained in the requirements of sticking with whatever we were doing, and by all means give us tip-top service, because you're dealing with lives. Well, of course, I had early on, I mean, in the other experience that I'd had working for the Navy Department, I realized then, with the destruction of materials and the testing that we were going into with elements that we were manufacturing, that it was extremely important that you maintain tip-top inspection service. And they did this. It was really a pleasure to have been involved with it, because they were very thorough, and they didn't miss a trick.
When did they separate the Air Force from the Army? Do you recall?
Well, whichever branch of service was handling the aircraft at the time, some of them were Navy. Initially, my experience was with the Naval, and then that was prior to going into service. Interesting that I had that background there, but it happened because I was working under the supervision of naval officers at the Naval Ordnance Plant in Centerline. And they accompanied us on all of our inspection tours, where we would go to visit the various suppliers that were making equipment for us. And they looked in and watched on the testing of their materials and elements that were manufactured. So that it was a tremendous learning experience, and a great deal of respect occurred as a regular response.
Yeah, I think they separated the services after the Second World War, because I had an uncle who was in the Army Air Force in the Second World War, like you were.
Yes.
And that was a totally separate branch.
Right. That was a time.
Yeah.
That was a different affair, though, because we didn't expect that. So.
Yeah.
But then they had originated
Just
a
before
bit
the
of.
Korean War, I believe.
What?
Just before the Korean War, I believe.
Yeah, right around
Yeah.
1949, 1950,
Right.
right in there.
Well, that was there. That was after some of the things that I had been involved in. But of course, it was continually a learning experience.
Was your radio training more like ground radio, or ground to air, or air to air, or how? All of it?
All of the elements, yes. So it was, and they sometimes, they were changing their data handling and so on. Some at that time, and we had to learn the new rules and regulations that they had for handling all the information that we were given. Of course, it was strictly under supervision, and we were all taught that we were to keep our mouths shut and do what we were asked to do, and nothing was to go off the base in regard to a discussion. And that was the way it had to be, and I'm glad it was. It was really a terrific learning experience.
Do you recall how long you were at Selfridge?
Ooh, I was longer in Texas. I was at Selfridge for about, and I was allowed to, at the time at Selfridge, I could come home, and so I remember that better than I did some of the other stuff. But it was, I would say I was there about, pretty close to a year.
Mm-hmm.
Off and on, and we were being trained in all the techniques that were being utilized by the Air Force.
Well, when you were at Selfridge, you lived on the base, didn't you? I mean,
I lived with my group, yeah.
Yeah, you didn't come home at night. I mean,
No, only if I had permission.
Right, okay, just a special occasion or a leave or something like
Oh, yeah,
that.
anyway.
Yeah.
Everything
Okay.
was under supervision.
Right.
So we were all delighted anytime they gave us a day or two leave to
Yeah.
be at home.
John, you got in just before the war started with the U.S., and you were in until sometime after the war ended. All that time that you were here,
I wasn't here all the time. They had me in Texas. I was in Sioux Falls.
but you were stateside.
Yes, I was
How,
stateside.
how did you feel about what was going on in the war?
Oh, we were all champing at the bit that we wanted to get with the unit we hoped to be assigned to and get to work on it. But it was really a tremendous learning experience, and you learn to respect all the elements of command and et cetera, which I think so often. I mean, we were totally out of touch. I wasn't involved in training or anything prior to the war, but boy, from that time I got that uniform on, I really had nothing but Army Air Force, and that was it. Or prior to that time, when I was working for the Navy Department, I learned to respect the Navy as well.
Dad, what he's asking though, if I may interject, is how did you feel by being stateside with other fellow veterans in
Fighting overseas, so to speak.
Exactly.
Oh yes, it was. You can imagine whatever time we had together, while we were always, and we had, I must say, recreational time was limited, and it was all work. I tell you, it was purely work, and they made sure that we were busy at all times. They had something or another that they had to test or this or that, and or review our tactics and so on. And they spent an awful lot of time keeping us aware of the reason why we were in there. And if you didn't have a respect for what you're going to do, why, you sure
Yeah,
had
you
to
were in, sounds like more of a training and type of outfit versus a combat outfit.
Well, most of the people who were doing the training had been in combat.
Uh-huh.
And they were the ones that were being assigned to train the parties coming into the affair. And they were quick to point out they had a respect for all the materials that we were using.
Right.
And they were always, in fact, in my particular instance, they were doubly interested in making sure that we retained our security on all of our coding and what have you. And they were certainly to be really eulogized for that, because they made it a point to tell all of us how important it was to keep this information to ourselves. So you darn well early on learned to just sit there and learn all you could and do the work, the exams and et cetera that they threw at you, and respond in kind, quietly, and in an obscure manner, you might say. But it was all part of a rationale that if you were going to be in service, you had to have, so that would teach you to keep your mouth shut and do your job.
Mm-hmm.
You were in for 6 years.
Yeah.
You're, usually the first enlistment is 2 or 3 years. Did you
Well-
re-up?
I wasn't, actually, my first element, I went in as a naval inspector.
Okay, so that's
Trainee.
part of the 1940.
Yes,
And then from there, you went on.
yes,
So you weren't really attached to a branch
no, not
as
until,
a service person.
not until I was
Okay,
officially,
okay.
In the Air Force.
yeah.
Do you remember what year that was?
Oh, goodness.
42.
42?
I would think, yeah, it was about that, yeah, 1942, 43. And I think we can check, gee, it's been so many years since I
Well, it was the Army Air Force.
checked with it.
Right.
Do you remember the start of the war in Pearl Harbor?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was working at the Naval Ordnance Plant when it happened. Boy, we really
You know, I'm quite a bit younger than you, but I remember that day.
Oh.
I had no idea what Pearl Harbor was, but I knew something big happened, and I'll never forget that day. My father was so scared. I've never seen him so scared, and that scared me.
Oh, yeah. I'll tell you. Well, I think, you know, it was a whole complete switch in routines and everything involved.
Dad, did you want to see combat? Did you miss not seeing combat? I think that's what the gentleman was trying to get
Well,
to before.
I anticipated it at every turn, you know, but for some reason or other, reasoning why I don't know, maybe because I seem to have a grasp of understanding the materials that we were using, and they would use me in some cases to train some of the newcomers and get them well aware of what was to occur thereafter, see. And it was my job to take them into mild elements and show them how we were inspecting the materials and what materials or what elements we used to inspect it. And in the final analysis, when they would take samples of what had been manufactured and explode them and destroy them, just to see how much they would withstand the materials that were going to be used in it. And surprisingly, a lot of them did explode, you know, in the process of testing.
Do you remember the end of the war in Europe?
Yes, I do remember, yeah, and everybody was so delighted with that, boy, I tell you. That was really something. But I think we were all pulling for that day, and regardless of where you were. But it was a wonderful time. I learned a great deal while I was in there. It was a wonderful experience. I wouldn't miss it.
Do you remember the end of the war in Pacific?
Yeah, where was I then? I think I was in, I think it was at Sioux Falls then, when that happened. No, was that? I believe it was, yeah. And, that was really a great day. Sioux Falls was another community. But they ran a tight ship there, I'll tell you.
Now, it's 1946, and you're separating from the service. Where did you go then?
Did you come back here to live?
I came back here, well, I was still assigned to Selfridge. I hadn't been released at that point. And the unusual opportunity obtained was that of being able to go home at night, you know, because you never heard of that while the war was on. So it was just a question of time before we were going to be released anyhow, so they gave us a lot more freedom then than we had previous.
So did you go back home when you
Well, I
got?
was stationed at the time. Actually, when I came back here, it was just prior to the end of the war. So, fortunately for me, I didn't have very far to go to celebrate, you know. But, and there was, you know, it was a time all of us were looking forward to.
When did you start your family?
Well, let's see.
It's-
I think we were married back in 40. Let's see.
Is that,
Oh yeah.
that's your wife and
45,
your
yes.
buddies?
This is my wife here. Yeah. My wife Edith. Lovely as ever.
What were you doing in Palm Beach in 1945?
Palm Beach Cafe.
Right.
That was in Detroit
And
area?
in uniform.
Yeah, that was well, we were home on leave. You see here one of my friends I haven't seen in a long time. Odette.
But the war
Yeah.
hadn't ended yet.
March 11th, 1945. Well, we were just off base for a few hours, apparently. I don't quite recall.
Where was that cafe, do you know? What was
Palm
it in,
Beach.
Was it in, you know, like the Detroit area?
Yes, it was.
Oh,
I don't know if it's still in existence.
okay.
Why don't you turn that picture around so I can zoom in on it? Yep.
Yeah, 'cause it wasn't Palm Beach, Florida, so.
It was,
No.
that's what I was trying to.
No, this isn't Palm Beach, Florida.
Okay.
This was the Palm Beach Cafe here.
Okay.
Okay, that one
Yeah.
makes sense then.
Now, is that you there?
That's me and my wife, yes.
Well, she wasn't your wife then, was she?
Oh, yes.
Well,
Yeah,
then
we
you
were
got married while you were in the service.
I was married to her before I went in the service.
Oh,
Okay,
so when were you married?
1941. I think this was about the,
okay.
yeah.
Okay,
You were working
No,
for
this
the
is
Naval
45.
Naval Department.
No, I was working for the Navy Department at the time.
I see. So,
So how did you keep informed with her while you're gallivanting all over the country?
Best I could by mail, airmail and
Did
phone.
you get a chance to go home much?
Not very often.
No.
That was a sad part of it. But, and of course, and, you know, obviously everybody just took every opportunity to have a good time. It wasn't, and that isn't always the best thing for a crowd like ours. The guys in service, that is. But they were all, everyone was pretty orderly, and most of us were in the service. I noticed here some of my former colleagues, no, they weren't in the service. But this fellow here worked with me in the Naval Ordnance Service. And he was a dear friend, too. Yeah.
how many children did you have then?
We just had the one, this young man. And, yeah, that was,
Did you spoil them?
oh, you gotta believe it.
He's
He's been a top dog for years.
He's got both ends, the top and the bottom, right?
Yeah.
So you're separated from the service. Where did you go back to work?
Wait a minute, did I go back there?
Did you go back to the
I went
Naval
back
Ordnance?
to the Navy Department for a short while. And they were, oh, of course, they ribbed the heck out of me for being in the Air Force, you know. Well, fine Navy man you are. But in any event, why, it was all in good fun.
When did you get the radio show, Dad, in Royal Oak, WEXL?
Oh,
When was that, 1947?
I think it was, well, here. This is 45.
Where's that record?
Yeah, I would imagine that was in 46 or 47. Yeah.
Why don't we bring that over
Yeah,
so I can
what is
get.
that a record of?
his own radio show. He used to sing ballads on
I
in
had
Royal
it.
Oak. It's,
WEXL.
one of the oldest radio stations in the country, from what I understand.
I don't know whether they're still in business, I believe.
He sang an assortment of Irish ballads, and
Yeah.
there were some newspaper clippings I can supply at a later time on that. Actually, the house has them.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, and then
How did you get affiliated with that?
Singing salesman program.
well, I was working for General Electric at the time, and they thought it was a good
I got it.
thing. They were encouraging me to, keep it up and that, so I did. I kept at it.
Get that out of your way.
I didn't need much encouragement. I enjoyed doing it.
How long would you do this?
Well, let's see. What's the date of that record?
47?
Well, it goes back to. I had my own program after. Well, that was part of it right there.
How did you become part of the radio routine?
Well, I was singing in a church choir at the time, and I'm trying to recall who did. There was so much happened at or about the same time here, and of course you must realize with all of this going on in the service, we never one of us missed an opportunity to congregate and chit chat with one another because we had so much in common, But from about the time of from 45 on, my life was I think I came back and I became attached at. Edith and I were married, and had been married shortly before I went in the service, and we once again joined the choir down at St. Mary's Church downtown, and that's where I met her, and tried to get our own family started, and along came John here, so that's that just about completed the saga of my service elements. But when I got out of the service, while in service, when I would go from one base to another, they would ask me to. They were always trying to utilize the servicemen for entertainment purposes, and it was my pleasure and my privilege to do it at a number of the stations I was located, and they were all encouraging me when I got out of the service to do something musically. And so, as transpired, I made an effort to, and in the meantime, I discovered I had a family to support, so I had to begin thinking as a down to ordinary ununiformed party, getting back into civilian life. And this happened. I had, for a time, I had a program on WEXL in Royal Oak, and that was a pleasant experience. And then as I soon got back into the ring of things, I discovered I had to spend time at my job, and I didn't have time for all this. But then when I became established then, and I had a regular job and was working back in civil life, I took time to look into this for a time, and we had able help. I had worked with a man who had been working with some of the stations downtown, and he suggested, he says, I think you have a real opportunity. Go out to WEXL in Royal Oak and get started out there, see what they can do with you. Well, surprisingly, things took off in a hurry, and about that time along came Giovanni, and we had to think a little more seriously about what we were doing. enough of this play stuff, so it was suggested to me then that I should take an opportunity at WXL. They offered the radio time, and so I did. And it was a very pleasant association.
How long did you have the radio show?
Oh, I'd say about 3 years, I think it was.
Did you sing live, or were you like a disc jockey?
No,
or
I was a vocalist.
you
Yeah.
had a live performance
And
on the radio.
Yes, that's right. And
And then would you have musicians play with you, or did you
Oh,
use what did you use for backup, like?
well, usually with group music, and or an organist, because most of my most of my work had been in church,
Mhm.
and but gradually, I mean, I got out into regular exposure, and it was very rewarding, very beneficial. I enjoyed it immensely, and I have nothing but fond memories of it.
What was it like back then now? We just get over a nasty war on two different fronts. Administration is in. What was the mood like among the civilian people? Can you remember anything about that?
Well, they were all pretty much involved in trying to re-involve themselves back in their regular lives, in regular living,
Yeah.
because many of them had been hired as employees at Naval Ordnance Plant, we'll say, and other installations, and
Yeah.
or they were in service themselves.
A big transition though with the people who worked in the factories. Women
Yeah,
were replaced with the servicemen coming back
yeah,
and
right.
getting established in a work family home building.
Yeah, this is
I
exactly.
mean, I don't remember that period very well, but I can remember the advertisements and the,
Yes.
It was very demanding. I mean, we had to learn a new routine again, one that we'd been, well, all of us had been removed from, but it was beneficial. We quickly grasped the nature of things and established ourselves the best we could.
that war must have taken a terrible toll on the people beyond what the people
It did.
attached to this service part went through.
Yes, it did. I have to agree with you, and I think for the most part, the fellows that returned, so many of them had been through some horrendous circumstances. That there were effects well beyond the norm, you know. And
Well, we're certainly experiencing that now in what we're doing, when most of the people like you that we talk to haven't talked about that
no,
in 50 years. And when they come here, it's the first time they've relived it,
yeah.
and you see the emotional.
Oh, it was a great, really quite an emotional
Yeah.
trip, by and large. But you had learned, you know, in your time in service that you put everything behind you, and you decided that you had to get with it. You were expected to do certain things, and your routine required you to be there and apply, and you were unable to separate from that, which was a good thing in a way, because you found that a lot of what you had been viewing and becoming involved in while otherwise involved was not necessarily the way of life, and it was a new awakening, I'd say. But
Did your wife ever share with you what experiences she went through while you were in the war?
yeah, she often talked about it, and And for a fact, I think that's one of the reasons, this group here was, quite a few of them were friends of mine. Well, you notice there's a young man in a naval uniform here. And way in the back here are some others. I think this was out in the Selfridge area. But, oh, I'm not sure. I can't
But what about the other picture there? Can we see the other picture, the one in the frame?
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, we got
When I
15
went in the service, my wife wanted to, she said, well, I'd like to have and when I came back from my basic training, she said, I wonder if you'd let me have a picture of you in your uniform. She said, because if the war is over, as soon as you say it's going to be, we all thought, sure, when we became involved in it, it was going to be over, you know. And at least that was the terminology we were using. But we found out it wasn't all that way, you know.
Right.
Yeah, but in any event, yes,
Well, yeah,
I
turn
was
around and see
flattered
it.
when she asked for the picture. By the way, a lovely young lady. I've been married quite a few years.
Very
and we're
nice.
enjoying
Okay.
it.
Is your wife still alive?
Yes.
Great.
Is that right?
She's here
She's
with
in the
me.
room
No
right
kidding,
now.
great.
While he's doing the interview.
So you've been, what, married 60 years or more?
Yeah, well, I think it must be. Let's
He's
see.
92, she's 96.
Yeah. She's 96 and I'm 92.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So you've been married then, well, what, since 40, something like
Yeah,
that?
41 I think it was.
40, 41?
I believe.
Wow.
So you,
Wouldn't
about
surprise me.
69 years then?
Yeah,
Yeah,
easy.
wow,
Wow.
About 69
Seemed like
years.
yesterday.
Yeah.
you must be an okay guy.
Well, thank you. I hope it.
Just can't find anything any better. That's it, huh?
I just hope that,
That's right.
you know, my spouse feels the same.
How is she?
Oh, fine.
Great.
In fact, I would have brought her with me if I thought it would have been helpful. But
Sure.
Wow.
But she's here, a few doors away. But
I'll go get her and introduce you at least.
and would you do that, Jack?
Wonderful, wonderful,
Yeah.
Yes.
great.
So did you take advantage of any of your GI benefits?
I did to a degree, but I was so busy trying to get reestablished that I found myself having to disassociate from some of the things that I wanted to do. But fortunately, we managed to get back in the swing of things, and it's been. I've learned that, you know, all of these things that happen to you, they are elements of, in essence, the past. And but you have to know they do stir you up a bit because of the fact that they happened as they did. And in this case here, so much of it transpired under circumstances that we didn't have any control over, that it's surprising. You would think that some of it would really be rammed into your memory, but it's something surprising that I guess maybe it's in an effort to think about nicer things at the time you're in service. You blot out some of the other things that are transpiring. But I'm realistic enough to realize that you know, you just go along the best you can, do the best we can, and I know that the good Lord has been particularly nice and good to us, and I hope that we're showing ourselves worthy of it.
Did you stay with the Naval Ordnance till you retired, or?
No, that's the sad part of it. I had to resign my job when I went into service, and you can well imagine they had a flood of potential employees from all those that went to work for the Navy later on, and or were discharged and decided to try going to work for
She
a
must be
government
downstairs
organization.
eating. They must have brought her down.
Okay.
I'll
She may be down eating, Jack.
I'll check.
I never occurred to me. I didn't
Maybe
even
what you can
ask
do.
you what time it was.
Yeah, well, I'll bring her up. I'll try to get her up.
You must have been very good at training for them to keep you there? You must have been a very good instructor.
Well, I hope so. I'll tell you, we took the job very seriously. I mean, sometimes I think we were too serious about it, but we were under strict, maybe this is probably a good thing to tie the Navy in, because I'll tell you, I think I learned before I ever got into the Army Air Force uniform, I learned how important it was to pay attention to the officers in charge, blah, 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 and don't question anything they tell you to do. So right off the bat, I learned to do that, and I'm glad I did, because boy, if I'd have opened my mouth,
Made it a lot easier, I'm sure.
darn right.
Okay, so here's the big question. You were in the Army Air Corps, and you had worked for the Navy. Who do you root for at the football game? The Army-Navy game?
Who do I root for?
Yeah. You've got divided loyalties there. Where is your heart really?
Well, if any of the what would you call them, academies of Navy, Army, or whatever are involved in the business, you look at one side of the card and the other, and you think to yourself, now which side am I going to support? But I've gotten to the point where I just let it go over my head. And,
Okay.
I'm there to have fun.
Yeah, not worried about
Okay.
that.
But there are a lot of loyalties, you can be assured. And you heard me mention a number of times Naval Ordnance Plant. I was a youngster in essence, and they trained me. And I believe that their training was instrumental in helping me with what I came in contact with in the service.
What is that plant now? Do you know?
It's still there, the USNOP,
Oh, okay.
yeah, United States Naval Ordnance.
So what did you end up doing for a career after that?
Well, I went to work for, let's see, who did I go to work for first? Well, I'm trying to recall. There were a number of places that I did end up working at when I got out of service. And much of what you heard here prior was all experiences prior to going into the service, and or after having been involved with the Air Force at Selfridge. I became so enamored of the potential possibilities of air travel possibilities and so on. I considered trying out for some of that, but then we had a family started, and I thought to myself, well, we're going to have to level off and fly right. We have obligations here, so I put everything back on the back burner. And my avocation as a vocalist, for a time there, you can imagine, while I was in service, I had to do the same thing. But once I got out, I made it my business. My wife and I became affiliated with St. Mary's Church downtown, and we had a beautiful church in Oregon. A wonderful experience. And it opened a lot of doors for me. Made a lot of friends at the time that I still have and see. But,
where did you retire from? What company did you retire from?
let's see. Oh goodness. Yeah, General Electric is the one that I think I retired from. Yeah. And I had been there for a few years after I got out of the service. But it was really a pleasant association. This is my lovely wife.
There you go.
Everyone,
Edie.
this is Edith McClory.
Yeah.
Hello, Edith.
Hello.
I'm Ann.
This is my wife Edith.
Hi.
Hi Edith, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you,
Yeah.
sir.
How are you, dear? Have a chair.
We're just grilling your husband. He's on a hot seat.
I'm a hostage.
Yeah,
Kind of take me by surprise.
we've got 5 minutes, Dave.
Well, you're always, as it should be, you were a complete part. We were a team. We worked, whatever we did, it was a team
I kept the
together.
home fires burning.
Yeah, he said you were married, was it 69 years? Is that? Your husband said you've been married like 69 years. Is that correct?
That's right.
Wow, that's a long time. Long time.
It seems like yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
but, yeah, I was,
How did you feel when he was in the service? Were you quite worried about that, or?
Well, yes, I was. Because we had to break up housekeeping and it wasn't easy.
I'm sure it wasn't. And all the stories you hear, what was going on across the pond over there,
Yes, he
must have been a bit scary, but
Fortunately, he didn't go overseas, but
must have done a lot of praying, huh?
yes, we did. And obviously, he did hear them too.
yeah, he did.
Maybe I cried long enough. Loud and long.
Yeah,
I'm just curious as to how all this affected the
Oh,
wives.
yes.
You know, we sit here and listen to these terrible stories and never get a chance to talk to the spouse as to what they went through. And
Fortunately, he did not go overseas, so it was a little different for me, I suppose. But I was still worried because the threat was still there
for sure.
daily.
And you didn't really know
No.
no.
anything, you
control.
know.
Now,
I remember when Pearl Harbor occurred, my father was extraordinarily concerned. He was scared.
Oh, yes.
And I didn't know what Pearl Harbor was. I mean, I was 4 years old, 3 years old. But I remember it because how scared he was. And he told me later they really thought there was going to be a Japanese invasion of California.
Oh, surely.
And that's what scared a lot of the
Yeah.
people. So for 4 years, nobody really knew
No.
what was going to happen. It was the
Right.
first time we'd ever been threatened, so to
That's right.
speak. And being here in the U.S., I guess as far away from California as we were was the only thing
Didn't know exactly.
we could hang on, you know?
did you stay in Detroit while he was in South Dakota and Texas, or did you follow your husband? Did you follow your husband while he was being shipped from South Dakota and Texas, or did you stay in Detroit the whole time?
I did go to South Dakota.
You
went
did go to
South
South Dakota.
I don't think, you didn't go to Texas, though, did you? No.
What?
You didn't come to Texas when I was there, no. No.
You just went for a visit though. You didn't live there, right? I say
South Dakota?
you just went like to South Dakota for a visit, like a 2-week visit or something, or did you actually live there?
We lived there.
We were in South Dakota.
Yeah,
not
Were
at
you
the
born
time
while
of
he was in the
service.
service? No, was that?
Not at the
Yes.
time of
You got that
service.
confused.
No.
She visited him in
That was-
Texas and
that
lived
was
in
before,
South.
wasn't it, Jack?
Oh, that was nice.
Yes.
We were in South Dakota before.
Yes, right. Yeah, but
Different.
everything, it was so close, you know.
Yeah.
Okay,
It was a problem sometimes.
we're just about out of time on the tape, so.
I still would like to hear you answer the question, Dad, how you felt being stateside with all these other guys overseas. Did you regret not
Oh,
being
well, you
in
can
combat?
imagine.
Did you feel lucky? Did you feel upset?
At
How
first,
did it affect
I thought to myself, well, gee, here are all these other guys out, you know, in boondocks, And I'm here at home or close to it or at the time. But then it was called to heart immediately how important it was to supply those guys with materials and elements that they could defend themselves with.
Right.
And that's what we were manufacturing. So it really became almost a crusade on the part of we people who were trying to make this equipment as against those who were out there using it. And we took a definite interest. I mean, I can tell you, that most of the people that I worked with, they were extremely efficient in doing their jobs, and we got a lot of commendations from the Navy Department as a result.
I can remember that. My family's from the Cincinnati area, and my dad worked in a defense plant, and they had all types of awards for their employees and so forth, and that was considered the same as being, in actual combat.
Yeah.
Because they were just as necessary
Oh, sure.
as the fellows
Right.
that were out on the lines
So right.
firing the weapons and so forth. And
Well, they needed us, and they because we were inspecting the materials that they were going to utilize. And if they weren't good, well, you can bet the guys they were coming back to were you, because you had inspected the material. What's with this now? How come?
but
they
it's
didn't hesitate to
unusual
ask
that you were younger, because in the case of my dad, he was maybe 33 or 34, something like that, and that was considered old for being in the military. They wanted the fellows just out of high school or in their early 20s. They didn't want some old guy 30 years old.
Okay.
Exactly.
Let's,
John, I want to thank you very much for sharing with us your experience, and particularly for bringing in your little bride to share her with us for a few minutes.
Well, frankly,
It was my pleasure.
without her, I don't know what would have transpired to me, because she's a very lifeblood of my life, as you can appreciate.
That's wonderful.
That's great.
That's wonderful.
And we, the years we've been married, it seems like they were yesterday, just a few days ago.
It's been a long, quite an interesting experience, though.
Yes, it has, and at some times and some point.